How the Rich Think Differently About Money, published by MindForge Audiobooks. Introduction. Most people believe wealth is about luck, being in the right place, having the right opportunity, knowing the right people. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Wealth is a thinking difference. The gap between rich and poor is not just income, it's mindset. Because two people can earn the same amount of money and end up in completely different financial positions. One builds wealth, the other stays stuck. Why? Because they think differently. There is an invisible gap that most people don't see. The gap between income and wealth. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep and grow. And many people confuse the two. They believe earning more means becoming wealthy. But that's not always true. You can have a high income and still have no wealth, because wealth is not created by income alone. It's created by decisions, by habits, by thinking patterns. This is why most people never truly understand how money works. They focus on earning, but they ignore building. They work harder, but they don't think smarter. They increase their income, but they don't change their behavior. And as a result, nothing really changes, because money doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to how you think about it. Your thinking patterns shape your financial outcomes, how you see risk, how you handle opportunities, how you respond to money. These mental patterns guide your decisions, and your decisions create your results. If your thinking is limited, your results will be limited. If your thinking expands, your opportunities expand. This is where the real difference lies. Not in how much you earn, but in how you think. There is also a critical distinction most people miss: the difference between earning money and building wealth. Earning is active. You trade time for money. You work. You get paid. But building wealth is different. It's strategic. It's long-term. It's about creating systems, assets, and decisions that continue to grow, even when you're not actively working. And this requires a completely different mindset. In this audiobook, you're going to discover how wealthy people actually think. Not just what they do, but how they see money, how they make decisions, how they approach risk, time, and opportunity. Because once you understand this, you begin to see money differently. You stop reacting. You start thinking strategically. And that shift changes everything. Because the moment you change how you think about money is the moment your financial life begins to change. Chapter 1. Rich people think in assets, not income. Most people are trained to think about money in one way: income. How much do you earn? How can you earn more? How can you increase your salary? From school to society, the focus is always on earning. Get a good job, work hard, climb the ladder, and while income is important, it is not the foundation of wealth. This is where the first major difference begins. Rich people think in assets, not income. Income versus asset-based thinking. Income is active. You work, you get paid, you stop working. The income slows or stops. It depends on your time, your effort, your presence. This is how most people operate. They focus on increasing income, higher salary, more hours, better job. And this works. Up to a point, because income has limits. There are only so many hours you can work. There is only so much energy you can give. And if your income depends entirely on you, your growth is capped. Asset-based thinking is different. Assets generate value. They produce income without requiring your constant effort. They work in the background. They grow over time. They create leverage. Instead of asking, "How can I earn more?" rich thinkers ask, How can I build something that earns for me? This is the shift from earning to building, from effort to leverage. Why salary doesn't create wealth. A salary gives you stability, predictability, security, consistency, and there is nothing wrong with that. But salary alone does not create wealth, because it is linear. You earn, you spend, you repeat. Even if your salary increases, your lifestyle often increases with it. More income, more expenses, same position. This is the trap. You feel like you're progressing, but you're not building, because wealth is not about how much you earn. It's about what you keep and grow. If all your money comes from your job, you are dependent on that job. Your income is tied to your time, and time is limited. This is why many high-income earners are not wealthy. They earn a lot, but they don't build assets. They rely on income instead of creating systems. And without systems, there is no scalability, no multiplication, no long-term growth. Building assets that generate money. Assets are the foundation of wealth. They are things that produce value consistently, over time, without constant input. When you build assets, you shift from working for money to having money work for you. This is where real growth begins, because now your income is not limited by your time. Your effort creates ongoing results. One decision can generate multiple outcomes. This is leverage, and leverage changes everything. Because instead of starting from zero every day, you build on what you've already created. Your past efforts continue to pay off. They compound, they grow, they multiply. This is how wealth expands, not through constant work, but through intelligent creation. But here's the challenge. Building assets requires a different mindset. It requires patience. It requires delayed gratification. It requires thinking beyond immediate results. And most people are not trained for that. They are trained for immediate reward, immediate income, immediate results. So they avoid asset building, because it doesn't feel rewarding at first. It feels slow, uncertain. But that's where the real power is, because what feels slow now becomes powerful later. The shift from earning to owning. This is the most important transformation, from earning to owning. Earning is temporary, owning is long-term. When you earn, you trade time. When you own, you create value. And ownership creates control. Control over your income, control over your growth, control over your future. This is why wealthy individuals focus on ownership. They don't just work in systems. They build or own them. They create assets. They invest. They think long-term. Because they understand one thing. Ownership creates freedom, not just financial freedom, but time freedom, decision freedom. Because when your income is not dependent on your time, you have options. You are not forced. You are not limited. You are in control. Why most people stay focused on income? The reason most people don't shift to asset thinking is conditioning. From a young age, you are taught, study hard, get a job, earn a salary. This becomes your default, your comfort zone. And anything outside of that feels uncertain, risky. So you stay where it feels safe, even if it limits you. This is why awareness is critical. You need to recognize this pattern and question it. Ask yourself, am I building something or just earning? Is my income dependent on my time? What happens if I stop working? These questions reveal the truth, and once you see it, you can change it. Starting the shift. You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need to quit your job. You don't need to take extreme risks. You need to start thinking differently. Begin small. Allocate part of your time. to building, not just working. Learn about assets. Understand how they work. Take small steps. Because the goal is not immediate transformation. It's gradual shift. From income thinking to asset thinking. From earning to owning. The long-term impact. Over time, this shift changes everything. You stop chasing income and start building systems. You stop relying on effort and start creating leverage. You stop thinking short-term and start thinking long-term. And as your assets grow, your dependence on income decreases, your freedom increases, your opportunities expand, because now your financial life is not based on what you earn, but on what you own. Final thought. In the end, the difference is simple, but powerful. Most people focus on income. Wealthy people focus on assets, and that one shift changes everything. Because income pays you once. Assets pay you again and again. So don't just work for money. Build something that works for you. Because the moment you shift from earning to owning is the moment your path to wealth truly begins. Chapter 2. They focus on value, not price. Most people make decisions based on price. How much does it cost? Is it cheap? Can I afford it? And on the surface, this seems logical. Saving money feels responsible. Spending less feels smart. But this way of thinking has a hidden limitation, because focusing only on price prevents you from seeing value. And this is where the difference begins. Rich people focus on value, not price. Price-sensitive versus value-focused mindset. A price-sensitive mindset looks at cost first. It asks, what is the cheapest option? How can I spend less right now? The goal is immediate savings, but a value-focused mindset is different. It asks, what am I getting in return? Is this worth it long-term? What value does this create? The goal is not just to save money, but to use money wisely. This shift changes everything, because the cheapest option is not always the best, and the most expensive option is not always the worst. Value is not about price, it's about return. What does this give you over time? What does this improve? What does this create? When you start thinking this way, your decisions become strategic, not reactive. Why cheap thinking keeps people poor? Cheap thinking focuses on minimizing cost, but often ignores consequences. For example, choosing the cheapest option may save money today, but cost more later. Lower quality, more replacements, less efficiency. And over time, those small decisions add up. This is how cheap thinking becomes expensive, because it prioritizes short-term savings over long-term value. It avoids investment. It avoids growth. It avoids anything that feels costly up front, and that keeps you stuck, because wealth is not built by avoiding spending. It's built by spending intelligently on things that grow, on things that return value, on things that improve your future. But cheap thinking resists that. It sees cost, but not opportunity. It sees price, but not potential, and that limits progress. Investing in quality, skills, and growth value-focused thinking leads to investment, not just in money, but in yourself, your skills, your knowledge, your growth, because these are high-return assets. When you improve your skills, you increase your earning potential. When you gain knowledge, you make better decisions. When you invest in growth, you expand your opportunities. These are not expenses, they are investments. But to a price-focused mindset, they may feel expensive because the return is not immediate. It takes time, effort, consistency. And that's why most people avoid it. They prefer immediate savings over long-term gain. But wealthy thinkers understand this trade-off. They are willing to invest now for greater returns later. They prioritize growth over comfort, value over price, long-term return versus short-term cost. Every financial decision has two sides: short-term cost, long-term return. Most people focus only on the first. How much does this cost me now? But wealthy thinking focuses on the second. What will this create over time? This is the key difference, because something that costs more today may create more value tomorrow, and something that saves money today may limit you later. For example, investing in learning, improving your skills, building something valuable. These require time and money up front, but the return can be significant, while avoiding them may feel safe. It delays growth, and over time, that delay becomes costly. This is why wealthy individuals think long-term. They are willing to accept short-term discomfort for long-term gain. They delay gratification. They invest strategically. They think beyond the present moment. The emotional side of price. Thinking. Price-based decisions are often emotional. They are driven by fear, fear of losing money, fear of spending too much, fear of making the wrong choice. So you choose the safer option, the cheaper option, the immediate option. But safety is not always progress. Sometimes it's limitation, because avoiding cost can mean avoiding growth, and growth requires investment, not just money, but mindset. Shifting to value thinking. To think like the wealthy, you need to change your perspective. Stop asking, how can I spend less? Start asking, how can I get more value? This doesn't mean spending carelessly. It means spending intentionally, with purpose, with awareness, with long-term thinking. Evaluate decisions differently. Will this improve my future? Will this create opportunity? Will this give me a return? If yes, it may be worth the cost. If not, it may not matter how cheap it is. The power of better decisions. When you focus on value, your decisions improve. You stop reacting to price and start thinking strategically. You invest in growth. You avoid unnecessary spending. You align your money with your goals. And over time, this creates a powerful shift, because now your money is not just being spent, it is being used to build, used to grow, used to create. And that is how wealth is built. Final thought. In the end, the difference is simple, but powerful. Most people focus on price. Wealthy people focus on value. And that one shift changes how you see money, how you spend it, how you grow it. Because money is not just about saving, it's about using it wisely. So don't just ask what something costs, ask what it's worth. Because the moment you start thinking in value is the moment your financial decisions begin to change. And that is where real wealth begins. Chapter 3. They use money as a tool, not a goal. Most people grow up believing one thing: money is the goal. Earn more, save more, have more. And once you have enough, you'll feel successful, secure, complete. But here's the truth. Wealthy individuals understand money is not the goal. Money is a tool, and this single shift changes everything. Money as leverage, not identity. For most people, money becomes identity. How much do I earn? What do I own? What can I show? These questions define self-worth, so money becomes emotional, personal, a reflection of value, and that creates pressure, because now every financial decision feels like it defines you. If you lose money, you feel like you failed. If you earn more, you feel more important. This is dangerous, because it ties your identity to something external, something unstable. Wealthy thinkers separate identity from money. They don't see money as who they are. They see it as something they use, a tool, like time, like skills, like knowledge. It serves a purpose, but it doesn't define them. This creates clarity, because now decisions are not emotional. They are strategic. You don't react to money. You direct it. Money as leverage is the ability to use something, to multiply results. And money is one of the most powerful forms of leverage. When used correctly, it creates opportunity, growth, expansion. Instead of asking, how can I keep this money? Wealthy thinkers ask, how can I use this money? How can it create more value? How can it generate more returns? How can it open new possibilities? This is the shift. From holding to using, from protecting to multiplying, because money that sits still doesn't grow. It only maintains. But money that is used strategically expands, creates, builds, and that's how wealth increases. Wealth is freedom, not status. Another major difference is how wealth is defined. Most people see wealth as status, a lifestyle, a display, a symbol of success, nice cars, expensive items, visible proof. And while there is nothing wrong with enjoying success, when wealth becomes about appearance, it loses its real purpose. Because real wealth is not what you show. It's what you control. Time, choices, freedom. Wealthy individuals understand this deeply. They don't chase status. They build freedom. Freedom to choose how they spend their time. Freedom to make decisions without financial pressure. Freedom to live intentionally. And that requires a different approach. Because status requires spending, but freedom requires building. One focuses on appearance. The other focuses on control. And control is what creates lasting wealth. Detachment from money emotions. Money triggers strong emotions, fear, greed, excitement, stress, and these emotions influence decisions. You may panic during loss. You may overspend during excitement. You may hesitate due to fear. This creates inconsistency, and inconsistency affects results. Wealthy thinkers develop emotional detachment, not by ignoring emotions, but by controlling their response. They understand. Emotions are temporary. Decisions have long-term consequences. So they don't react impulsively. They pause. They evaluate. They act with intention. This is emotional discipline, and it is critical because money decisions made emotionally often lead to mistakes, but decisions made with clarity lead to growth. This doesn't mean they never feel anything. It means they don't let feelings control their actions. They separate emotion from execution, and that creates stability, consistency, confidence. Using money to create opportunities. Money is not just for spending. It is for creating opportunities, creating options, creating growth. This is where wealthy thinking becomes powerful. They don't wait for opportunities. They create them, using resources, using money, using leverage. They invest in ideas. They support growth. They build systems. Because they understand money is not valuable on its own. It is valuable for what it can create. A single decision can open multiple paths. A single investment can create long-term returns. A single opportunity can change direction, but only if money is used intentionally, not emotionally, not impulsively, strategically. The shift from accumulation to application. Most people focus on accumulation, saving, holding, collecting. And while saving is important, it is not the final step, because accumulation without application limits growth. Wealthy thinkers focus on application, using money, deploying it, putting it into motion, because money in motion creates results. It generates value. It expands opportunities. This is the difference. Not just having money, but using it effectively. Why most people stay stuck. The reason most people don't make this shift is fear. Fear of losing money. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of uncertainty. So they hold on. They protect. They avoid. And while this feels safe, it limits growth. Because growth requires movement, action, risk. And if money is never used, it never expands. This is why mindset matters. Because once you see money as a tool, you stop fearing it. You start using it, building a new relationship with money. To think like the wealthy, you need to redefine your relationship with money, not as something to chase, but as something to use, not as identity, but as leverage, not as status, but as freedom. This shift changes your decisions. You stop reacting emotionally. You start acting strategically. You stop focusing on having more and start focusing on creating more. And that creates growth. Final thought. In the end, money is neutral. It has no power on its own. Its power comes from how you use it. Most people chase money. Wealthy people direct it. And that is the difference. Because money is not the destination. It is the vehicle, a tool, a resource, a means to create something greater. So don't just focus on earning money. Learn to use it. Because the moment you stop chasing money and start directing it is the moment your financial life begins to change, and that is where real wealth is built. Chapter 4. They take calculated risks. Most people avoid risk. They want certainty. They want safety. They want guarantees. And that's understandable because risk feels uncomfortable. It feels uncertain. It feels dangerous. It feels like something to avoid. But here's the truth wealthy individuals understand. Growth does not exist without risk. Every opportunity carries uncertainty. Every decision has a downside. Every path forward involves something unknown. If you try to eliminate risk completely, you eliminate growth with it. This is why risk is necessary, not optional. Because staying the same is also a risk, a hidden one. If you avoid investing, your money loses value over time. If you avoid opportunities, you miss potential growth. If you avoid change, you stay in the same position. So the question is not whether risk exists. The question is how you deal with it. This is where the difference begins. Most people either avoid risk completely or take it blindly. Wealthy people take calculated risks. They don't ignore risk. They understand it. They measure it. They evaluate it. They manage it. This is the difference between smart risk and reckless risk. Reckless risk is emotional. It is based on impulse. It ignores consequences. It focuses only on the upside. There is no preparation, no plan, no awareness of what could go wrong. Calculated risk is different. It is intentional. You look at the situation carefully. What is the potential gain? What is the possible loss? Can I handle the downside? You don't move blindly. You move with awareness. This creates confidence because you are not guessing. You are deciding. And this is what allows wealthy individuals to move forward while others stay stuck. Another major difference is fear versus opportunity thinking. Most people see risk and think about what they could lose. What if this fails? What if I lose money? What if I make a mistake? So they stop. They wait. They avoid. But wealthy thinkers see the same situation differently. They ask, what if this works? What can I gain from this? What opportunity is here? This doesn't mean they ignore risk. It means they balance it. They see both sides, loss and gain, risk and reward, and then they make a decision. This shift is powerful because your focus determines your action. If you focus only on loss, you will avoid. If you focus on opportunity, you will move, and movement creates results. Another important truth is this: fear never disappears. You don't become fearless. You become better at acting despite fear. Because fear is natural. It is your brain trying to protect you. But protection can become limitation. If you listen to fear every time, you will never move forward. So wealthy individuals learn to work with fear, not against it. They acknowledge it, but they don't let it control them. They act anyway. This is where growth begins. Another key element of calculated risk is learning through failure. Most people fear failure. They see it as something negative, something to avoid, something that proves they were wrong. So they try to avoid it at all costs. But wealthy individuals see failure differently. They see it as feedback, as information, as part of the process. Every mistake teaches something. Every loss provides experience. Every failure improves judgment. And that learning reduces future risk. Because now you are not starting from zero. You are building on experience. This is why failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Without failure, there is no learning. Without learning, there is no improvement. Without improvement, there is no growth. So avoiding failure completely means avoiding growth. This is why wealthy individuals are willing to fail, not recklessly, but intentionally. They take risks knowing that not all will succeed, but each one will teach them something. And over time, that experience becomes an advantage. Another important concept is starting small. You don't need to take big risks immediately. You can begin with controlled exposure, small decisions, small investments, small steps. This reduces fear because the downside is limited, but the experience is valuable. And as you gain experience, your confidence grows. Your understanding improves. Your ability to manage risk increases. And over time, you become more comfortable with uncertainty because it is no longer unknown. It is familiar. This is how you build risk tolerance, not by avoiding risk, but by engaging with it gradually. Another powerful shift is understanding that not all risks are equal. Some risks are worth taking, others are not. The difference comes down to understanding, information, preparation, awareness. When you understand what you are doing, risk becomes manageable. When you act without understanding, risk becomes dangerous. So the goal is not to avoid risk. It is to increase your ability to handle it. Through learning, through experience, through awareness. Because the more you understand, the less uncertain things feel. And the less uncertain they feel, the easier it is to act. In the end, risk is not the enemy. Misunderstanding it is. If you see risk only as danger, you will avoid it. If you understand risk as part of growth, you will use it. Because every level of success requires a new level of risk. You cannot grow without stepping into uncertainty. You cannot build without making decisions that are not guaranteed. And you cannot create something meaningful without facing the possibility of failure. So the goal is simple. Don't avoid risk. Understand it. Manage it. Move with it. Because the moment you stop fearing risk and start using it wisely is the moment your growth accelerates. And that is the mindset that separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward. Chapter 5. They think long-term. Most people think in days. Some think in weeks. A few think in months. But wealthy people think in years. And that difference changes everything. Because your time horizon shapes your decisions. If you think short-term, you chase quick results. If you think long-term, you build lasting outcomes. This is why long-term thinking is one of the most powerful financial advantages. It shifts your focus from immediate satisfaction to future growth. And that shift separates those who stay stuck from those who build wealth. One of the core principles behind long-term thinking is delayed gratification. This is the ability to say, not now, later, to choose future benefit over present pleasure. And this is not easy, because your brain is wired for immediate reward. It wants results now. It wants satisfaction now. It wants comfort now. So when you face a decision, the easier option is always the short-term one. Spend instead of invest. Relax instead of build. Consume instead of create. And in the moment, it feels right. But every short-term decision has a long-term consequence. If you always choose what feels good now, you sacrifice what could be better later. This is why delayed gratification is powerful, because it allows you to align your actions with your future. You invest instead of spend. You build instead of consume. You stay consistent instead of quitting. And over time, those decisions compound. Another key concept is playing the long game. Most people want fast results. They want quick growth, quick money, quick success. But fast results are often unstable. They don't last, because they are not built on a strong foundation. Wealthy individuals understand that real success takes time. They are not in a rush. They focus on building something sustainable, something that grows steadily, something that lasts. They don't chase shortcuts. They focus on systems. They make decisions that may not show immediate results, but create long-term impact. This requires patience, because the early stages of growth are slow, almost invisible. You may not see progress immediately. You may not feel like anything is changing. And this is where most people quit, because they expect results too quickly. They lose confidence. They switch strategies. They go back to old habits, and they reset the process. But those who play the long game stay consistent. They trust the process. They continue even when results are not visible. And eventually, that consistency pays off. This leads to one of the most powerful ideas in wealth building, the compounding mindset. Compounding is not just about money, it's about decisions, small actions repeated over time. At first, the impact is small, almost unnoticeable. You save a little, you invest a little, you improve a little, and it doesn't feel significant. But over time, those small actions grow. They build on each other. They multiply, and eventually they create large outcomes. This is the power of compounding. It rewards consistency, not intensity. You don't need to do something big once. You need to do something small repeatedly. And that is where most people struggle. Because consistency is not exciting. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, repetitive, sometimes boring. But it works. Because over time, it creates momentum. And momentum creates results. Another reason long-term thinking is difficult is the psychology of waiting. Waiting feels uncomfortable. It feels like nothing is happening. It feels like you are not progressing. And your brain interprets that as failure. So it pushes you to act, to change something, to look for faster results. But often the best action is to stay consistent, to continue what you started, to allow time to do its work. This requires trust in the process, trust in your decisions, trust in long-term growth. And that trust is built through understanding. When you understand how compounding works, you become more patient, because you know that results are coming, even if you don't see them yet. Another important shift is redefining progress. Most people think progress must be visible, immediate, noticeable. But real progress is often invisible at first. It happens beneath the surface, in habits, in consistency, in small decisions, and over time, it becomes visible. But only if you don't interrupt it. This is why consistency matters more than speed, because speed creates short-term results. Consistency creates long-term success, and long-term success is what builds wealth. Wealthy individuals also understand that time is their greatest advantage, not money, time, because time amplifies everything. Every investment grows with time. Every habit strengthens with time. Every decision compounds with time. So instead of trying to rush results, they focus on using time effectively. They start early. They stay consistent. They allow compounding to work. And over time, their results grow exponentially. While others are starting and stopping, switching and quitting, they are building steadily, quietly, consistently, and that difference becomes significant. Another key aspect of long-term thinking is emotional control, because staying consistent over time requires discipline. It requires ignoring short-term distractions. It requires resisting the urge to quit. And that is not easy, because emotions fluctuate. Motivation rises and falls. But long-term thinking is not based on emotion. It is based on commitment. You continue even when you don't feel like it. You stay on track even when progress feels slow. You trust the process even when it's not exciting. And that is what creates results. In the end, long-term thinking is not about waiting passively. It is about acting consistently, with patience, with intention, with discipline. Because wealth is not built in days. It is built over years, through small decisions, repeated over time. So if you want to build wealth, you need to change how you think about time. Stop chasing quick results. Start building long-term outcomes. Because the moment you shift from short-term thinking to long-term thinking is the moment your financial life begins to transform. And that is how real wealth is created. Chapter 6. They control emotions around money. Money is not just numbers, it is emotion. Every financial decision you make is influenced by how you feel in that moment. Excitement, fear, stress, pressure. And if you are not aware of it, those emotions begin to control your behavior. This is where one of the biggest differences appears. Wealthy individuals don't eliminate emotions, they control them. Because they understand something most people ignore. Emotional decisions create inconsistent results. Clear decisions create long-term growth. Most people react. Wealthy people respond. That difference changes everything. Emotional discipline in decisions is not about becoming cold or disconnected. It is about creating space between feeling and action. When something triggers you, you pause. You don't act immediately. You ask, what is actually happening? What is the long-term impact? Am I reacting or deciding? This pause is powerful because most financial mistakes happen in moments of emotion, not in moments of clarity. You don't overspend when you are calm. You overspend when you are stressed, excited, or trying to feel better. You don't panic when everything is stable. You panic when things feel uncertain, and those reactions cost you. Over time, they create patterns of impulsive spending, hesitation, and inconsistency. This is why emotional discipline matters, because it protects your decisions. It keeps your behavior stable even when your emotions are not. One of the most common emotional patterns is impulsive spending. You don't always spend because you need something. You spend because you feel something. Stress after a long day, boredom when you have nothing to do, excitement when you want to reward yourself. And in that moment, buying feels like relief. It feels like control. It feels like progress. But it is temporary, because the feeling fades and the pattern continues. Impulse is fast. It does not give you time to think. it pushes you to act immediately. And that is why it is dangerous, because it removes intention. You are not deciding, you are reacting. Wealthy individuals break this pattern. They slow it down. They create friction. They give themselves time before making decisions. They ask, do I actually need this? Will this matter in the future? Is this aligned with my goals? This simple pause changes behavior, because now you are not controlled by emotion. You are guided by intention. Another important area is how you respond to losses. Loss is emotional. It triggers fear. It creates doubt. It makes you question your decisions. Most people react to loss with panic. They withdraw. They avoid. They stop taking action because they want to protect themselves. But this reaction often makes things worse because it is driven by fear, not logic. Wealthy individuals stay calm during losses, not because they don't care, but because they understand. They know that loss is part of the process, not the end of it. They don't see it as failure. They see it as feedback, something to learn from, something to improve. This allows them to stay stable, to continue thinking clearly, to make better decisions moving forward. Because when you panic, you lose control. But when you stay calm, you maintain it. Another critical difference is how they handle pressure. Financial pressure can come from many places: uncertainty, responsibility, expectations. And under pressure, emotions increase. Fear becomes stronger. Doubt becomes louder. And your ability to think clearly decreases. This is where rational thinking under pressure becomes essential. Most people make their worst decisions under pressure because they want immediate relief. They want to escape the feeling. So they act quickly, without thinking. But wealthy individuals do the opposite. They slow down. They focus on clarity. They rely on principles, not emotions. They ask, what is the best decision based on facts? What is the long-term impact? Am I reacting to pressure or responding to reality? This allows them to stay grounded, to make decisions that are aligned with their goals, not their emotions. Another important shift is understanding that emotions are temporary. They change, they rise and fall, but decisions have lasting impact. So if you make decisions based on temporary emotions, you create long-term consequences. But if you make decisions based on long-term thinking, you create stability. This is why wealthy individuals do not trust their emotions completely. They acknowledge them, but they don't follow them blindly. They separate feeling from action, and that creates consistency. Consistency is what builds wealth, not perfect decisions, not perfect timing, consistent behavior, repeated over time. And emotional control makes that possible. Because without control, behavior becomes unpredictable. And unpredictable behavior leads to inconsistent results. Another powerful idea is this: you don't need to remove emotion. You need to manage it. You will feel fear. You will feel excitement. You will feel doubt. That is normal. But you don't have to act on it. You can feel something and still choose differently. That is control, and that is where growth begins, because now you are not controlled by your environment. You are guided by your awareness. Over time, this becomes a habit. You pause more. You react less. You think clearly, and your decisions improve. Not because you know more, but because you control more. In the end, controlling emotions around money is not about perfection. It is about awareness. It is about recognizing when you are being influenced and choosing to respond differently. Because money will always involve emotion. But your success depends on how you handle it. So don't try to eliminate emotions. Learn to manage them. Because the moment you stop reacting and start responding is the moment your financial life begins to stabilize. And stability is the foundation of growth, and growth is what creates wealth. Chapter 7. They focus on multiple income streams. Most people are taught to rely on one thing, one job, one paycheck, one source of income. It feels stable, predictable, secure. But that sense of security is often an illusion, because when all your income comes from one source, your entire financial life depends on that one stream. If it stops, everything is affected. This is why wealthy individuals think differently. They don't rely on one source. They build multiple income streams because they understand a simple truth. One income is not security. It is dependency. When you depend on a single source, you are vulnerable. Your control is limited. Your options are restricted, and your financial stability is fragile. This is why one income is risky, not because it is bad, but because it is not enough. It cannot protect you from uncertainty. It cannot create flexibility. It cannot support long-term growth on its own. Wealthy individuals see this clearly. They don't eliminate their primary income. They expand beyond it. They create additional streams, because each stream reduces dependency and increases stability. This is the diversification mindset. Instead of putting everything in one place, they spread it, not randomly, but intentionally. They build different sources of income that operate in different ways. So if one slows down, others continue. If one fails, others support. This creates balance, and balance creates security. Most people think diversification is only about investing, but it is broader than that. It is about how you structure your financial life, how you earn, how you grow, how you protect. When you diversify, you reduce risk. Because your income is not tied to one outcome, it is distributed, and that distribution creates resilience. Another important shift is moving from earning to building. Most people earn income. Wealthy individuals build income systems. Earning is active. You work, you get paid. You stop working, the income stops. Building is different. It creates systems, structures that generate income beyond your direct effort. These systems take time to develop. They require planning. They require consistency. But once they are built, they continue to produce. This is where real growth happens, because now your income is not limited by your time. Your effort creates ongoing results, and each system adds another layer, another stream, another level of stability. At first, building multiple income streams may feel difficult because it requires a shift in thinking. You are used to focusing on one thing, one job, one routine, but expanding requires intention. You need to allocate time differently, think differently, act differently, start small. You don't need multiple streams immediately. You need awareness. You need direction. You need to begin. Over time, each step builds on the previous one, and gradually your income structure changes, from one source to multiple, from dependency to flexibility. Another key advantage of multiple income streams is financial security. Security is not just about how much you earn, it is about how stable your income is. If your income depends on one source, it is unstable, even if it is high, because one change can disrupt everything. But when you have multiple streams, your income becomes more stable, more predictable, more resilient, because it is not tied to one outcome. This reduces stress. It increases confidence. It gives you options, and options create freedom, because now you are not forced to depend on one path. You can choose, you can adjust, you can adapt. This is what financial security really means. Not just having money, but having control. Another important benefit is growth. Each income stream adds potential. Each system creates opportunity, and as they grow, they begin to support each other. One stream can fund another. One success can create another. This creates momentum, and momentum accelerates growth. Instead of relying on linear progress, you create layered progress, multiple streams growing at the same time. And over time, this becomes powerful because your income is no longer limited. It expands in different directions. This is how wealth scales, not through one source, but through multiple sources working together. However, it is important to understand that this is not about doing everything at once. It is about building gradually, with intention, with focus, with consistency, because each stream requires effort, attention, development. So the goal is not to rush. The goal is to build, step by step, over time. Another common mistake is thinking that multiple income streams require complexity. They don't. They require clarity, understanding where you are, understanding what is possible, and taking action accordingly. Because the idea is not to create chaos, it is to create structure, a system where your income is supported from different directions. And that structure creates stability. In the end, focusing on multiple income streams is not just about earning more. It is about reducing risk, increasing control, and creating long-term security. Because when your income is diversified, your financial life becomes stronger, more flexible, more resilient. And that is what wealthy individuals build. Not just income, but systems. Not just earnings, but structure. So don't rely on one source. Start thinking in streams. Start building beyond your primary income. Because the moment you shift from dependency to diversification is the moment your financial life begins to strengthen. And that is how real security is created. Chapter 8. They invest in themselves. First, most people think investing means putting money into something external. Stocks, businesses, opportunities. And while those matter, wealthy individuals follow a different order. They invest in themselves first, because they understand a simple principle. Your greatest asset is not what you own. It is what you can do. It is your ability to think, learn, adapt, and create value. And that ability determines everything else. If you improve yourself, your results improve. If you stay the same, your results stay the same. This is why self-investment comes first, not after success, before it. Skills are the highest return investment you can make because skills generate income. They create opportunities. They increase your value in the marketplace. And unlike money, skills cannot be taken away easily. They stay with you. They grow with you. They compound over time. When you develop a valuable skill, you change your earning potential. You are no longer limited to what you were before. You can do more. You can offer more. You can earn more. This is why wealthy individuals focus on skills, not just money. They understand that money follows value, and value comes from what you can provide. If your skills improve, your value increases. If your value increases, your income potential expands. This is a direct connection. And yet most people ignore it. They focus on saving money instead of increasing their ability to earn it. They try to manage what they have instead of expanding what they can create. And that limits growth. Because saving alone does not create wealth. Growth does. And growth starts with you. Learning is a key part of this process. Wealthy individuals never stop learning. They constantly seek new knowledge, new perspectives, new ways of thinking, because they understand that the world changes, opportunities change, and if you don't adapt, you fall behind. Learning keeps you relevant. It keeps you capable. It keeps you prepared. But learning is not just about information. It is about application. Knowledge without action has no value. You can learn everything, but if you don't apply it, nothing changes. This is where growth happens. Not in knowing, in doing. When you apply what you learn, you gain experience. When you gain experience, you build confidence. And when you build confidence, you take better actions. This cycle creates progress. Another important aspect of self-investment is increasing your earning potential. Most people try to increase income by working more hours, more effort. But there is a limit to that. Time is limited. Energy is limited. So working more can only take you so far. Wealthy individuals focus on increasing the value of their time, not just the amount of time. They improve their skills. They improve their thinking. They improve their ability to solve problems. And as a result, each hour becomes more valuable. They earn more, not because they work more, but because they provide more value. This is a different approach. It shifts the focus from effort to impact, from quantity to quality, and that creates growth. Another powerful idea is that mindset is the real asset. Skills matter. Knowledge matters. But mindset determines how you use them. If your mindset is limited, your actions will be limited. If your mindset is strong, your actions will expand. Your beliefs influence your behavior. If you believe you cannot grow, you will not try. If you believe opportunities are limited, you will not look for them. If you believe risk is dangerous, you will avoid it. And all of these beliefs limit your potential. Wealthy individuals develop a different mindset. They see growth as possible. They see challenges as opportunities. They see learning as a lifelong process. This mindset drives action, and action creates results. So investing in yourself is not just about learning skills. It is about changing how you think, how you approach problems, how you respond to challenges, because that determines everything else. Another important factor is consistency. Self-investment is not a one-time action. It is a continuous process. You don't learn once and stop. You don't improve once and stay there. You keep going. You keep developing. You keep growing, because growth is ongoing, and each step builds on the previous one. This is how compounding works in self-investment. Small improvements, repeated over time, leading to significant change. You may not see immediate results, but over time, the impact becomes clear. Your thinking improves, your decisions improve, your opportunities expand, and your results follow. Another reason self-investment is powerful is because it creates independence. When you rely only on external factors, your control is limited. But when you invest in yourself, you increase your control. You become more capable, more adaptable, more prepared. You can handle change. You can create opportunities. You are not dependent on one path. And that creates confidence, because you trust your ability to figure things out, to learn, to adapt, and that confidence allows you to take action, which leads to growth. In the end, investing in yourself is the foundation of everything else. Before assets, before opportunities, before wealth. Because everything you build comes from you. Your thinking, your skills, your decisions. So if you want to build wealth, start with yourself. Improve your abilities, expand your knowledge, strengthen your mindset, because the better you become, the better your results become. And that is the highest return investment you can ever make. Not in something external, but in yourself. Because you are the source of everything you create. And when you grow, everything else grows with you. Chapter 9. They think differently about time. Most people think money is their most valuable resource. They focus on earning more, saving more, growing more. But wealthy individuals see something deeper. Money is replaceable. Time is not. You can lose money and earn it again. You can spend money and make it back. But once time is gone, it is gone forever. This is why wealthy people think differently about time. They don't just manage money, they manage time. Because time is the foundation of everything. Every decision, every opportunity, every result. And how you use your time determines how your life unfolds. Most people trade time for money. They work a set number of hours. They get paid for those hours. And this becomes their primary system. It feels normal, logical, stable, but it has a limit. Because your time is limited. You cannot work 24 hours a day. You cannot scale your time endlessly. So if your income depends entirely on your time, your growth is capped. This is the time versus money trade-off. You give time to get money. But wealthy individuals break this pattern. They stop asking, how can I earn more per hour? And start asking, how can I make my time more valuable? This is a completely different approach, because instead of increasing hours, they increase impact. They focus on leverage. Leveraging time effectively means using your time once and getting results multiple times. Instead of repeating the same work again and again, they create something that continues to produce. This is how time expands. One action leads to ongoing outcomes. One decision creates multiple results. This removes the limitation of time, because now your results are not tied directly to your hours. They are tied to your systems. This is where systems become important. A system is something that works without your constant involvement. It continues to produce results, even when you are not actively working. This is how wealthy individuals operate. They don't rely only on effort. They build structures, processes, methods that continue to generate value. And this allows them to free up time, because their income is no longer dependent on their presence. Another key element is delegation. Most people try to do everything themselves. They believe they need to control every task, every detail, every responsibility. But this creates a problem, because your time becomes overloaded. You spend energy on tasks that may not be the best use of your time, and that limits your growth. Wealthy individuals think differently. They ask, what is the best use of my time? And anything that does not align with that. They delegate. They allow others to handle it. Not because they are avoiding work, but because they are focusing on what matters most. High-value activities, decisions, strategy, creation. This is how they maximize their impact, because instead of doing everything, they focus on the few things that create the most results, and they let go of the rest. This is not about being less productive. It is about being more effective, because productivity is about doing more. Effectiveness is about doing what matters. Another powerful concept is buying back time. Most people spend money to gain things, objects, experiences, comfort. But wealthy individuals use money differently. They use it to gain time. They pay to remove tasks, to reduce workload, to free up their schedule, because they understand that time is more valuable than money. If you can use money to free up time, you can use that time to create more value, more opportunities, more growth. This is a powerful cycle. Money creates time. Time creates opportunity. Opportunity creates more money. And the cycle continues. But it only works if you value time correctly, if you see time as your most important resource. Another important shift is thinking long-term about time. Most people think in short blocks. Today, this week, this month. But wealthy individuals think in years. They understand that time multiplies results. Small actions today can create big outcomes in the future, but only if you stay consistent. This is why they focus on long-term decisions. They are willing to invest time now for greater results later. They don't chase immediate rewards. They build future value, and that requires patience, because time-based growth is not instant. It develops slowly, but over time, it becomes powerful. Another key difference is awareness. Wealthy individuals are very aware of how they spend their time. They don't treat it casually. They don't waste it unconsciously. They evaluate it. They protect it. They use it intentionally, because they understand that every hour has value, and how you use that hour determines your direction. Most people spend time without thinking, scrolling, reacting, following routines. But wealthy individuals are deliberate. They choose how they spend their time. They align it with their goals, and that alignment creates progress. In the end, thinking differently about time is not complicated, but it requires awareness. It requires a shift in perspective, from time as something to spend to time as something to invest. Because time is not just passing, it is building. Every action, every decision, every moment is shaping your future. So if you want to build wealth, you need to change how you see time. Stop trading it only for money. Start using it to create value. Leverage it, protect it, invest it. Because the moment you treat time as your most valuable asset is the moment your life begins to change. And that is how wealthy individuals think. Not just about money, but about time. Because in the end, money can grow, but time can only be used. And how you use it determines everything. Chapter 10. They build wealth quietly. Most people think wealth should be visible. They associate success with appearance, luxury items, expensive lifestyles, external proof, because visibility feels like validation. If others can see it, it must be real. But wealthy individuals understand something deeper. Real wealth is often invisible. It is not about what you show, it is about what you build. This is where the difference begins. Wealth versus showing wealth. Showing wealth is about appearance. It is about looking successful, creating an image, impressing others. And this often requires spending, because appearance must be maintained, upgraded, displayed. Wealth, on the other hand, is about substance. It is about what you own, what you control, what continues to grow. And this does not need to be visible. In fact, many wealthy individuals choose to keep it quiet because their focus is not on being seen, it is on building. Most people confuse the two. They think someone who looks wealthy is wealthy, but often that is not true. Because showing wealth and building wealth require opposite behaviors. Showing wealth requires spending. Building wealth requires discipline. And you cannot prioritize both at the same level. If your focus is on appearance, your resources go toward maintaining that image. If your focus is on building, your resources go toward growth. This is why wealthy individuals choose quietly building over loudly displaying. Another important concept is lifestyle inflation. This happens when your income increases, and your lifestyle increases with it. You earn more, so you spend more. Upgrade your lifestyle. Buy more expensive things, increase your expenses. And on the surface, it feels like progress. You are living better, enjoying more. But there is a hidden problem. Your financial position does not improve because your spending grows with your income. So no matter how much you earn, you stay in the same place. This is why many high-income individuals are not wealthy. They earn a lot, but they also spend a lot, and that prevents growth. Wealthy individuals avoid this trap. They increase income, but they do not increase lifestyle at the same pace. They control their expenses. They maintain discipline. They prioritize investing and building. Because they understand, income creates opportunity, but discipline creates wealth. This is a key difference, because it requires self-control. It requires resisting the urge to upgrade everything immediately. It requires thinking long term. And that is not easy, because society encourages the opposite. It promotes consumption. It promotes display. It promotes immediate reward. So staying disciplined requires awareness. It requires intention. Another important aspect is privacy. Wealthy individuals often keep their financial position private, not because they are hiding, but because they are focused. When you display wealth, it attracts attention, expectations, pressure, and sometimes unnecessary influence. But when you keep things private, you reduce distractions. You stay focused on your goals. You make decisions based on your priorities, not others' opinions. This creates clarity, and clarity improves decision-making because you are not trying to impress, you are trying to build. Privacy also protects your mindset. When you are not constantly comparing or being compared, you stay grounded, you stay aligned, you avoid unnecessary pressure, and that helps you stay consistent. Another key principle is long-term focus. Building wealth quietly requires patience because results are not immediate. They develop over time, and without visible proof, it can feel like nothing is happening. But something is happening. Growth, slow, steady, consistent. Wealthy individuals trust this process. They don't need constant validation. They don't need to show progress. They focus on the outcome, not the appearance, because they understand that real wealth is built over years, not days, and that requires staying committed, even when it is not exciting, even when it is not visible. This is where discipline becomes critical. Discipline over display. Most people choose display because it feels good. It provides recognition. It creates immediate satisfaction. But discipline chooses differently. It chooses what is beneficial, not what is impressive. It prioritizes long-term results over short-term validation. This is not about avoiding enjoyment. It is about balance. It is about knowing when to spend and when to build. And wealthy individuals maintain that balance. They enjoy their success, but they don't let it control their behavior. They don't let lifestyle define their identity. They stay focused on growth. Another important factor is internal satisfaction. When you are focused on showing wealth, your satisfaction comes from others, from reactions, from recognition. But when you are focused on building wealth, your satisfaction comes from progress, from knowing you are improving, from seeing your systems grow, from creating something meaningful. And this type of satisfaction is more stable because it is not dependent on external validation. It is internal. And that creates confidence because you are not trying to prove anything. You are building something. In the end, building wealth quietly is not about hiding. It is about focusing. It is about directing your energy toward growth instead of appearance, because appearance fades, but structure remains. What you build lasts. What you show does not. So the choice becomes clear. Do you want to look wealthy or become wealthy? Because the two require different behaviors, and only one leads to long-term success. Wealthy individuals understand this. They choose discipline over display. They choose building over showing. They choose long-term growth over short-term validation. And that is why they succeed. Not because they earn more, but because they think differently and act accordingly. So if you want to build real wealth, start quietly, focus on growth, stay disciplined, and let your results speak over time. Because real wealth does not need to be loud. It becomes obvious eventually. And when it does, it is not just visible, it is sustainable. Conclusion: Wealth is not built by luck. It is built by thinking, by the way you see money, by the decisions you make, by the habits you repeat every day. Luck may create opportunity, but thinking determines what you do with it. This is why your mindset shapes your financial future, not your starting point, not your background, your thinking, how you respond to risk, how you manage money, how you use time. These patterns guide your actions, and your actions create your results. If your thinking stays the same, your outcomes stay the same. But when your thinking shifts, everything begins to change. And the powerful part is this: you don't need a complete transformation overnight. Small shifts in thinking create massive results. Choosing value over price, choosing long-term over short-term, choosing discipline over impulse. These decisions may feel small, but repeated over time, they reshape your financial life, because consistency builds momentum, and momentum creates change. Another important truth is that wealthy thinking is not exclusive. It is not reserved for a few. You can learn it, you can adopt it, you can apply it, because these patterns are not fixed. They are developed through awareness, through intention, through action. And once you begin to think differently, you begin to act differently. And once you act differently, your results follow. In the end, wealth is not just about money. It is about control, freedom, direction, and all of that begins in your mind. So if you want a different financial life, start with a different way of thinking. Because when you think differently, you don't just change your money, you change your life. CTA, call to action. Which wealthy mindset do you need to adopt? Take a moment and share your answer in the comments. Your insight could inspire someone else to grow. If you know someone who wants to improve their financial life, send this to them. Subscribe to MindForge Audiobooks for more powerful mindset audiobooks. Next video: the silent habits that keep you poor.